Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Speaking of Iowa. I'm Glenn Hurst, and I'm here today with two guests, and we're going to do a little speaking about education. First guest with me is Chris Gorman. Chris, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Chris Gorman, and I have been teaching in Iowa for 31 years. I've taught in a rural school district and a city school district. Helping my husband run a campaign for the Iowa legislature. His name is Steve Gorman, and he's running for House District 16 here in Council Bluffs.
Great. Yep, Steve's a great guy, and he's on the fire department. He's just been an active member of the county party, the Democratic Party, for years and years, and he's a great resource, and we thank you so much for coming here and being with us today. We are at Sugars, which is in Council Bluffs, and as you can hear, the party is going on around us. It's the first Friday in Lent, so we just ask you to please bear with us as all the noise passes by us. Also with us, we have today is Sarah Dressel. Sarah, introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Sarah Dressel, and I work for Iowa State Education Association. But before this, I was an employee of Council Bluffs School District for 15 years and taught here in Potawatomi County. Grew up in Potawatomi County, and so my roots are all in this area. So.
Great. So I'm Glenn Hurst. Of course, I'm running for Potawatomi County Supervisor, as most of you know by now. And what we're trying to do with this series is really give people a chance to talk a little bit about important issues related to Iowa, and try to remain kind of specific here to Potawatomi County. But this is a statewide issue, and we're so grateful Sarah's here. She's part of the Iowa Education Association, and just an invaluable resource in terms of what's the history and what's been going on in education. One of the big topics this year is school vouchers, right?
Yes.
So, Sarah, why don't you start us off telling us a little bit about what the school voucher issue is, why we should be concerned about school vouchers?
As a taxpayer, we should be concerned in the sense that it's taking our taxpaying money and giving it to families that homeschool or send their children to private school, and it derails the public school funding to the public schools currently in Iowa. So right now we have choice schools anyways. You can send your kid to St. Albert, you can send them to Council Bluffs type of thing already. This would just take more money away from the public schools of Council Bluffs and give it to parents to then use for their children's education. But if they also don't use it, they can then save it and use it later on for college or things like that also.
Right. So we would see a cut of public funding
Absolutely.
to our public schools. And Chris, you're a teacher in the public school.
Yes.
How does a funding cut affect your classroom?
Well, our funding has already been at a limit in the last near future. I mean, we've lost a lot of funding through their cuts in the allowable growth for pupil.
We were talking about that right before we started filming.
Yes.
About the increase that happened this year. What was your impression of that? You said it very well.
Well, it's not an increase, it's a decrease. We've had our funding cut recently. 10 years ago when I was teaching, it was more around the area of 4%, and now we've been working with just under 2%, and then this year it was cut back to 1%.
Right, and they touted this in the paper like 1% increase in education, and patting themselves on the back at this increase, but it's a total joke.
Right.
Didn't 60% of the population of Iowa respond negatively to the voucher bill? And yet all we were told is that it's probably off the table for this year. But it could come back, right?
Come back on another bill. We tied to another one. So.
Right. So just because they took away the House bill that was out there that made it through the subcommittee, and the chairman said, no, we're not going to pass it on, doesn't mean that it can't be slipped into something else. And we've seen this. We've seen this type of deceitful behavior from this legislature.
Yeah. Being brought up somewhere else, probably.
Right.
we don't want to decrease their enrollment or hurt their funding or doing anything like that either, because having both school systems in Council Bluffs just makes both better themselves. That competition to keep kids, to get kids, and to educate kids, it's better to have both than to just take all the money from one and put it to somebody else even.
Right. There's no value in taking money away from the public schools. You don't help the public school by taking away money. But we see this type of manipulation of all of our institutions lately. We saw this, teachers were affected by the attack on collective bargaining that happened last year. So, we see that there's just really this attack against our public institutions in general. Teachers were affected, obviously, by the collective bargaining changes, correct?
Yes, absolutely.
Have you seen changes in faculty? Have you seen changes in the quality of people you're able to recruit? I know we're very early in this law, but what is foreseen as the effect that you'll have on faculty?
In Minnesota, they're already, some politicians in Minnesota are already saying, "Oh, great! We can't wait to recruit Iowa teachers north."
Yes.
Right, because we have great teaching institutions here.
Yes.
We make good teachers in Iowa.
Yes.
Apparently they're for export.
They said, they'd like to have an Iowa education but a Minnesota paycheck.
Right.
It's a perfect mixture.
Wow.
And in our area that we deal with, we had 28 locals bargain after the law.
Okay.
20 of them have no contract but a one page, pretty much. Or a couple of them that have a little more than a page, have just a few things left in. A lot of it was stripped out. And my fear is the closer those school districts get to the border of Nebraska,
Right.
they'll be the next ones wanting our teachers. They already take them as it is before this happened, and now they're going to take more.
Right, very Pot County specific. We sit next door to Omaha public school system, and West Side and Millard. These are all very viable options for
I have
a
teachers
Council
calling
Bluffs
me,
resident.
asking for what does their pay look like, what's their contract look like, where can I find this? Because they're nervous, they're worried.
And the limits that happened in Iowa, the only two things that they can negotiate for now are base salary,
The base wage.
base wage,
Yep,
and
that's it.
that's it.
There is no second.
Now you can, you can do base wage of like the typical salary schedule that most teachers are accustomed to.
Okay.
And then there's that extracurricular activities, it used to be called supplemental pay, where like the coaching, the journalism, things like that fall under. And you can do the base wage of that and how they determine that salary.
That is it.
Yep.
So, have teachers been traditionally overpaid? Did I miss something here? Chris, there's a stunned silence coming from you.
Well, if you consider being able to buy a home and a nice car and put your child through school, I mean that's about how elaborate most teachers live.
I remember as a student being embarrassed to look my teachers in the eyes someday when topics of teacher salaries, teachers' benefits came up, because other than my parents, these were the primary people in my life. These are the people who molded my values, my morals, who I was, what I became, and to know how undervalued they are. To know that my art teacher was buying the art supplies for our class that she is paid to teach.
I recently asked a student to assist me with something, and she was doing a great job, and another student said, "Are you going to be a teacher?" And she said, "No way, they don't make enough money."
Right.
And that's what's going to happen in Iowa too, is that we aren't going to get teachers to come teach here
Right.
because of how everything's falling out.
So, was there a problem with Iowa education in the last 5 years? I mean, has there been something that I've missed? I don't think so either. I don't think so
I
either.
don't think so.
We can always improve because we're
Always
teachers and we always are trying to improve. But as far as what was the big target of why we weren't? Yeah, there wasn't one.
Well, there were struggles in the budget because it continually decreased. Yes, there were some struggles. The rural school districts have a heck of a time with transportation costs. Why? Oh, that was when they were closing schools in the 90s, right?
Right.
80s and 90s.
And look at
They've created problems.
I mean, Potawatomi County has been, our school districts deserve a round of applause. We had schools consolidating back in the 60s, seeing the future, seeing the need to pool resources to work together to provide the best education for our students. And now the resources are being pulled away from them to do more with less.
Yes.
Do more with less seems to be the mantra of the state.
Yeah.
And teachers are asked to do more. We were talking before we started a little bit about mental health care.
Yes.
We know that policemen and firemen are frontline of mental health care, but what about teachers? I mean, do you see that in the classroom? Are you frontline mental health care?
Absolutely. I do a lot of counsel, as well as all my colleagues. We're doing a lot of counseling within a curriculum, within a education day. I mean, we're supposed to be teaching lessons, but they get so interrupted that there is no way you cannot address some of the issues that the kids are facing.
How many kids are in a classroom, or in your classroom?
I average about 27.
27 kids. So you educate them, you counsel them, you are their moral compass in many cases. And yet we're just looking at more and more ways to add work and take away your benefits and take away your ability to do your job.
Yes.
I mean, just the funding for your classroom.
Yes.
I think the number is $6,600 per student is about what the annual distribution per pupil. That seems like a really small number.
It is, because of the 1%. I mean, every year it gets smaller, so this 1% to that didn't really add that much money for us.
Right.
And at that same time, they write regulations that make it harder to control things locally.
Yep.
You know, and I think that's a struggle for districts. I think curriculum needs to be designed as local as possible to meet the needs of the community.
That's a great
We
point.
understand what it takes to serve our community, and I'm sure most communities feel that same way.
Right. There's basic reading, writing, and arithmetic that every American citizen should have.
We all want successful kids.
Yeah.
You know, we all want that.
But there's absolutely a difference between being a Potawatomi County student and being a Story County student, or down in Lamoni, or some of our areas, other areas across the state that are even more rural. I mean, we've kind of got an economy here that is pretty unique. We have service and manufacturing, we have agriculture, technology. We've kind of got a little bit of everything in Potawatomi County. There are other rural counties where their goal again is to retain their young people, and these blanket regulations on what must be emphasized in the curriculum doesn't seem to make sense.
When they issue money on a certain program,
Right.
and you're only going to get the funding if you implement that program, I think that makes it harder and harder too.
Because then you have to hire a teacher that can teach that program.
Correct.
And
Right.
then that cuts funding somewhere else.
Or train.
Or train
Training
them.
costs money too.
Right. So I think education will be a topic we could go on and on and on about. I think there are some important things to stay vigilant about, and one of them is this vouchers issue. You've got to be careful about diverting public money to private schools.
And it's not just private schools, it's also homeschooling children.
Right.
Which then the mental health care I think about that you bring up is that we don't know those kids have those mental health cares because we're not seeing them in our schools, or no other teacher even in a private school is seeing them, and nobody's kind of keeping an eye on it, and then stuff happens.
Lack of oversight.
Yes.
It's going to be a problem.
Yes.
Where do you think we need to be going in terms of providing quality education to young people? Start with you, Sarah.
So I think, of course, from my stance, we of course would like collective bargaining back because our voice being heard is much more powerful with a contract that you're legally bound to. But our teachers that don't have these contracts anymore have still such great working relationships with their administration, and they're still getting a lot done. But they can't do everything that they would like to do jointly as administration and teachers without that funding.
Right.
And the funding is a priority in transportation funding, classroom funding, teacher funding. All of that has to happen to make anything else even be plausible to happen.
I'll tell you, I know we have in Chris's husband, Steve Gorman, running for House District 16, that he's a union member, a public union member with the fire department. Charlie McConkey, who's the only Democratic representative from the western side of Iowa in the House. Myself as Potawatomi County Supervisor candidate, the three of us worked together on trying to defend collective bargaining. Steve was right there by my side in Bayless Park when we protested what I refer to as the St. Valentine's Day Massacre, which was just a year ago that collective bargaining was decimated. And that, I've got to give applause to those guys and all the people who came out in trying to defend public sector workers and teachers specifically. And I will tell you, Bayless Park was full of about 300 people, and without a doubt, half of them were educators.
Yes.
So, Chris, what were your thoughts on where do you think education's going, what we should be doing?
Well, we have to service the mentally ill. I do have a daughter with mental issues, and that's the first reason why Steve and I decided to run for the Iowa House, to speak for some of the most vulnerable people that get overlooked and definitely underfunded. All of this is definitely impacting both of our profession. He is a firefighter and me as a teacher. We spend a lot of our time trying to help people with mental issues. It impacts us executing our jobs the way they're meant to be. And I think public funding for, I think we need more mental health services outside of the school, so the schools aren't burdened so much. But obviously, I would take any help and any funding and any program for those vulnerable students.
Right, you've got to be on the front. We've got to have people on the front line.
Right. These people can be treated and can be productive citizens, and that would save a lot of money.
Right.
Our incarceration is expensive, and that is what happens to many of them.
Right. That's what we have social workers in the cars now with police officers and on the trucks with the fire department. And the reality is we should be having that in the classroom and in the school, where if we're going to start being serious about mental health care, because right now we're starting at zero. There's no money for mental health care.
Right.
If we're going to start putting money towards mental health care, what a great opportunity it would be to do that in the school, and to do that where public sector employees and people are making all of those direct contacts. Well, I thank you both so much for taking time to educate me about education in Iowa. And we invite everybody to tune back in next week or in 2 weeks. We're going to try to do either a live show or a game show. So check in and see how that goes. Thanks again. I'm Glenn Hurst. This is Speaking of Iowa.